Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session of Easy Dharma for Difficult Times. Um, I'm your host, Pastor Niral. That was a joke. Okay. These sessions are nightly sessions done by myself and Pastor David, 9 p.m. every night, apart from a Thursday, when we'll be sharing little bits and pieces of the Dharma with you and things that you might be of more interest to you, especially during this time period where we're in MCO. So, before I get into it, let me see who is online so far. Just refresh my screen. Okay, so I just want to do a little bit of a recap about what I shared within the last session that I did. The last session was actually all about retreats, what retreats are. So, and the purpose of doing a retreat. All right. So, okay. Yu Seng's online, Karen Wong's also online, Mr. Lam, hello. Pastor David has joined us once again, and Wei Ting is also online. Thank you for joining today's session. So, actually, hello, Pastor Antoinette is also online. Hello. Okay. Today's session is going to be a little bit shorter than our usual sessions, so I'm going to get kind of straight into it at this point. Now, today's talk is all about merits versus karma. And a lot of people have been asking me questions about what is the difference between karma and merit. Because some of the first sessions that I did for Easy Dharma for Difficult Times were on the Four Noble Truths. And a lot about the Four Noble Truths actually, revolve around the law of karma. So during those sessions, what I talked about was positive karma and negative karma, and then how all forms of karma actually lead us to suffering in some way or another. And then in a subsequent session after that, I actually talked about the karma chart, in which Examinate Samra, in which he actually compiled and outlined the way in which you go about living your life in a way that generates positive karma rather than negative karma or even neutral karma. And after that, I kind of touched slightly on the fact that when we engage in spiritual practices or Buddhist practices, you actually generate something known as merit. Now, a lot of people get confused about the difference between karma and merit and why they're different, how they're different, and what makes them different. So this is something that I wanted to talk a little bit about in today's session. We've had some more people come online. Let's see who's online. Shireen's online. Hello, welcome. Thank you for joining. And Pastor Hani, Sukfan's also online. Lilin, Tan, Keng Hoi, Iman, and Chung is back. Good to see you all here again for today's session. So, what I wanted to discuss in today's session is actually the difference between karma and merit. All right. Now, generally speaking, we all know that anything we do in life, using what our body, our speech, or even the way we think about situations or people actually leads us to create karma. And as I explained in earlier sessions, this karma is either positive or this karma is either negative. And what determines whether it's positive or negative is actually if the results will lead you to more suffering in the future or less suffering in the future. So if it's an action that leads to less suffering, then it's termed a positive karma. And if it leads to more suffering, then it's termed negative karma. All right? But there is also a thing called neutral karma. And in the end, this actually has the same effect as negative karma does. But that's something, if you want to know more about that, please watch the session that I did on the karma chart. All right? Now, one thing that people forget about karma when they're doing it I mean, when we're talking about it, when we're explaining it, or when you're trying to live your life according to understanding the law of karma, is we forget that karma multiplies, and karma can also be exhausted. All right? So it is not a finite thing. Okay? For example, the most traditional example that's used in the Lamrim is that if you kill an insect or a hair louse, in fact, if you kill an insect, even no matter how small, maybe you can even say an ant, okay? What happens is over time, this negative karma that you've accumulated from the killing of a small ant, all right, accumulates more and more and more, up to the point where it can actually reach the point of being equivalent to killing a human being. All right? So karma in this sense multiplies, and it multiplies over time. All right? So when you do a particular negative action, we say within Buddhist practice that you need to purify that negative karma. And through the purification of that negative karma, you exhaust it. But what does it mean by exhaust it? It means the potential to cause you suffering in the future, to cause you suffering in the future actually no longer exists. That's what it means by exhausting your karma. All right? This also actually applies for positive karma as well. Positive karma also multiplies over time as well. But the difference between whether things multiply negatively or things multiply positively is actually how we go about living our lives. All right. So if you keep engaging in negative actions or neutral actions, this actually leads your negative karma to multiply more and to multiply faster. Compare that with positive karma. If you want positive karma to multiply, all right, you should engage in more positive actions to keep doing positive actions. And this is the mechanism that allows positive karma to multiply. Okay, so I've just seen some more people come online. So we have Tata Ong, Kinho's online. And welcome to today's session. Thank you very much for joining. Before we go any further, if you do have any questions regarding the difference between karma and merit, or if you're slightly confused already as to what the definition is of karma and merit, please do ask now, because as I said at the beginning, I do apologize, but today's session is going to be shorter than usual. So please start asking questions now, so that when I finish my explanation, I can help answer any questions you may have due to the short time of today's session. So what I've just done is I've explained the positive karma and negative karma and how it multiplies over time, in the sense of negative karma multiplying over time and also positive karma multiplying over time. All right. Now, the thing about karma is that even though it can be multiplied, it can be exhausted, which means it will stop. For example, if you have the karma to, say, live a rich and fantastic life at the moment, all right, eventually, if you don't keep doing positive things with your life, that karma is not going to multiply. When it doesn't multiply, it will exhaust. And when it exhausts, you no longer have the karma to live a fantastic, luxurious life, all right? And what happens at that time is basically you will probably lose your material resources, you may lose your wealth, and that in itself will cause some form of suffering, all right? Conversely, if you think about a negative karma that you've done, all right, eventually it will stop affecting you. You will no longer feel the results of it. But as I was saying before, if you do things from a negative or even a neutral perspective in day-to-day life, this will actually multiply. So you're never exactly sure when negative karma will finish, or if you've exhausted a particular negative karma that you're talking about. Okay, so that's kind of more in depth into what karma is. Now I'm going to talk about merit. Merit is another sort of energy, if you were, all right? Now, merit is actually always a positive sort of energy, okay? You can never have negative effects from merit. Merit is always something that that you will always have positive effects. You will always receive positive effects from. And merit as an energy actually does not exhaust. Once you have generated merit, it stays with you forever, basically, until you reach enlightenment. Okay? And the whole purpose of generating merit is actually for your spiritual path. All right? Now, we always say within Buddhism, especially when we're doing any practices, that you always need to do two particular things. One is to purify negative karma, which I've talked about previously. But the second one is also to generate more merit. Okay? So why is merit essential for our spiritual path? Okay? Merit can actually, as an energy, as a force, can actually overpower your karma. And the reason that we need to kind of overpower our karma at this particular point in time is because we have a whole store of negative karma from previous lives. And when we have that built up force, that negative force from the negative karma, we're always going to go through some form of suffering. And when we do so, it's particularly hard for us to think about transforming ourselves to be better people, because we actually kind of get kind of self-absorbed mode of we are suffering. And it is very hard and difficult for us to see ways to overcome suffering. That's why in Buddhism, especially within deity practices, there are many ways of generating merit, all right? Where, you can give offerings, you can make abundant offerings on your altar. You can even give offerings to your lama, or make offerings to the enlightened beings, make offerings to the three jewels, make offerings to the Sangha. And this itself generates a lot of merit. Is the feed... Am I still online? Okay, all right, still online.
Yeah, back. Yeah, back on. Sorry.
Okay, back on. Hello! Sorry about that. We're undergoing technical difficulties again today. So where was I? All right, I was talking about merit. All right. So what I wanted to discuss was actually how you go about generating merit. Okay, so merit actually comes about from engaging in a virtuous action, a positive action. But I want to break it down a bit more, but not go into too much detail. So I'm going to preface doing a virtuous action with motivation. All right, and then you do your action, whatever it may be, and then you do a dedication. When you do these three things, basically, you generate merit. Now, the motivation is quite important. The motivation is key, all right? In order to generate merit, you must think about benefiting other people, all right? As part of your spiritual path, as part of your personal transformation, all right, towards enlightenment, towards gaining the state of enlightenment, all right? And then because we have a Mahayana motivation, we say that we want to gain enlightenment not just for ourselves, but for other people, all right? So that is your motivation before you do a virtuous action. And then you do the action, whatever it may be. I will give certain examples in a short while. And then after that, you basically do a dedication. And a dedication basically takes the energies that you have created, this positive, virtuous energy, and turns it into what we know as merit. Now, a dedication is basically the same as your motivation, but done at the end, all right? And what this does what this is exactly the same. I've engaged in this virtuous action, all right, to help somebody or to further my own spiritual transformation, my own spiritual progress in order that I can achieve enlightenment so that I can benefit others. So you can see that a virtuous action has a motivation at the beginning and has a dedication at the end. And these three things together is what generates merit. Okay? So unfortunately, if you think about doing a virtuous action, but you don't have the motivation at the beginning and you don't have the dedication at the end, it literally turns into positive karma rather than merit. Okay? And this is an important thing for all of us to remember, especially if we're practicing Buddhism, because usually most of the time when people say, oh, you've done something very good, you've generated a lot of merit, actually most of the time it's probably only going to be positive karma. So this is why we must remember to set our motivation at the beginning of anything we do, and always, always, always do a dedication. All right? That will transform any action in the middle into a merit-making action. All right? This is something that a lot of us actually forget during our daily practice, but it's something that the masters of the past have actually stressed a lot. And this is kind of exemplified within the Lamrim. In the Lamrim, you have all of these stories of these masters, of these lamas of the past who have done all these virtuous things, all these virtuous actions. But the Lamrim actually also states that you always have to have a good motivation at the beginning and you have to have a dedication at the end. So the Lamrim actually, I can't remember the names of the lamas off the top of my head, but this example popped into my head just now when I was talking, that there have been some lamas in the past who would just, throughout the course of the day, they would just stop whatever they were doing and then they'll just do a dedication. All right, then they'll go on to do something else, then they'll stop themselves and they'll do a dedication. The reason is because they realized that they were actually doing a virtuous action and they wanted to make sure that it turned into merit so that they can reach enlightenment to help other people. All right, so it's very, very important to have that motivation and have that dedication at the end. All right. Now, what are some of the things that we usually attribute as we usually label as a merit-making activity? So, one of the things that we always say is that doing your daily sadhana, your daily prayers, generates merit. And it does, because you're invoking upon the energies of the enlightened beings. And you actually set your motivation at the beginning, because just by taking refuge in the three jewels, and also the refuge verse with bodhicitta, okay, which is a 4-line verse, actually includes motivation within taking refuge, all right? Because at that specific point, you're actually thinking about you're taking refuge and thinking about transforming your mind so that you can help other people. This is another reason why taking refuge is also important, and the importance of actually taking refuge properly, all right? If you want to hear all about taking refuge, please see some of our previous sessions in which I talk about it. So that's included in your daily sadhana. Then you have the prayers themselves, which generate a lot of energy, which generate a lot of merit potential. I'm going to call it potential here, because when you do your dedication at the end, you turn that energy completely into merit, all right? So this is kind of a normal example that we always think about, all right? Especially when we're practicing Buddhism. And there are other examples, such as making abundant offerings on your altar, making offerings to the Sangha. Doing all of these sorts of things are normal, usual ways of actually generating merit, okay? But today what I want to focus on is actually you can generate merit during any action that you do in daily life, all right? Especially since within Tibetan Buddhism, we're practicing the Bodhisattva path, okay? The path of a Bodhisattva is to basically take any action in life and change it into something that is positive, something that benefits other people, while at the same time generating merit, okay? Now, you're going to ask me, how does that work? All right. Now, I'm going to take an example that many people of us here in Kechara will know about, and that is feeding animals, All right. Now, a lot of us know that His Eminence Sen Rinpoche was very fond of feeding animals and making sure, not just animals, just everybody, but also animals. And what Rinpoche would do is he'd always have his car stocked with dog food, because here in Malaysia we do have a lot of stray dogs. All right. So every now and then Rinpoche would stop his car when he saw a group of stray dogs, or maybe even just one stray dog, and have some of the students get out, get the food, and make sure that the stray dog was fed and watered. All right. Now, a lot of people have actually, because they've seen Rinpoche's example of this, have started emulating this. And this is fantastic. This is really good, because you're actually caring for another sentient being, all right, that will probably not be able to express their gratitude to you for doing so, for helping them in some way, all right? But what we often forget is that when Rinpoche did it, this was actually a merit-making activity for the person doing it. So the student that was actually feeding the animal, but also for the animal, it was also a chance to receive blessings, to receive imprints, so that they can benefit from and achieve enlightenment in future lifetimes. And the way this worked is, when Rinpoche said, whenever we got out the car to feed the animal, first thing we should do as we were preparing the food was to set a good motivation. So you set a good motivation that you're feeding the animal, not just because the animal needs food, but because you yourself are training in compassion towards the animal, and also so that basically you yourself can use this generation of compassion within your mind stream to become a better compassionate person yourself. And this progresses, and this sends you down, or sends you up the path towards enlightenment. Then when we were actually feeding the animal, or maybe in this case the stray dogs, what we would do is we would actually recite mantras. All right. Now, there was 3 mantras that Rinpoche always used to ask us to recite. One is Dorje Shugden's mantra. The second is Manjushri's mantra. And the third is Medicine Buddha. All right? These 3 are the mantras that Rinpoche used to ask us to use to help to bless the mind stream of the animal. All right? So when we were reciting the mantras, we would either blow on the stray dogs if they would allow us to get close. Otherwise, we would actually blow the mantras onto the food before feeding it to the stray dogs. Either way, it actually plants the imprints of enlightenment and the blessings of these 3 deities into their mind stream. And we would recite out aloud as well, so they would hear the mantra as well. And then once we'd finished, we'd always do a dedication. All right? So something as simple as feeding a stray animal, you can turn from just an ordinary act of compassion, which actually only generates positive karma, to a merit-making action. All right? This actually can be applied to anything you do in life. All right? You can transform any action you do in life into a merit-making activity. And yes, that does include right now when you're at home, stuck inside, maybe with your family or maybe your friends, maybe your housemates, stuck inside during MCO. All right? Now you're going to ask me, how do I go about doing that? How do I do it? How do I transform an everyday activity into a merit-making activity? I'm going to give you an example. And the example is something that we all need to do every day, and that you're all doing every day, and that is eating. Okay? A lot of us actually cook, all right, for our family, for our children, for our spouses. And the simple act of cooking and feeding our family itself can be turned into a merit-making activity. All right? I'm going to explain how this works. And you're probably thinking, but I do it every day. How am I going to turn it into a merit-making activity? Actually, every day what you're doing is you're actually generating karma, because any action we do generates karma. But now I'm going to explain how to transform that into a merit-making activity. So when perhaps you're cooking your meal, you're cooking your food for your family, for your kids or your spouse, when you're cooking it, you shouldn't think, oh, I'm just cooking it so that, they're hungry so that I can feed them, so, they won't starve and, they'll be okay. When you're cooking, you should have the motivation that you're cooking food, all right, for your loved ones, so that they can benefit from it. All right, so it's not just about them not starving, it's that you focus on the positive aspects of providing your family with food. But at the same time, because we're from the Mahayana perspective of trying to help others, you should kind of think, I'm cooking this food now. Now I'm only cooking this food for my family, but may I have the opportunity to cook food and provide nourishment for all sentient beings. All right, so you take the aspect of a normal everyday action of cooking and you change it. Now you're not only just thinking about cooking for your family, but you think about providing nourishment. And for you make the kind of aspiration, the motivation, may I always be able to provide nourishment for all sentient beings. All right, then you can sit down and then you can have your meal, and then the meal can be perfectly normal. It can be just an everyday occurrence in your household. You're talking about what you saw on TV, or what Pastor Niral or Pastor David were talking about on Easy Dharma for Difficult Times last night, or whenever you're eating. And then at the end of it, or maybe even just at the end of the day, you can do a general dedication to transform any of the actions that you've done during that day with a good, positive motivation into merit. Okay? So I hope this example makes sense. If it doesn't, please do ask, because it's almost 3:30 already, so I haven't got that much longer left. All right? Let's just see who's come online. We've had quite a few people come online. JC Go, hello. Ben Kui, Yiling, hello. Thank you for joining. Sharon's also online. And Sarah, yep. And Florence Chan. Got some comments. I see. Okay. There's one comment by Chung and there's one question by Sharon. Chung basically says, may all sentient beings have happiness in the... Okay, so is the... Okay. Yeah. So Chung's posted up the 4 immeasurables, which is a very good motivation to do at the start of any of your prayers, or even at the start of every day. And this, when you know the meaning of it, leads to any action that you're doing to turn into merit, provided you do a dedication at the end. If we blow mantras on the food that we are cooking, this is a question from Sharon, if we blow mantras on the food that we are cooking, would we collect merits or good karma? Okay, that's a good question. All right, now, first of all, your motive, you have to take into consideration when you're talking about merit, it's not just the action, it is also the motivation at the beginning, and it's also the dedication at the end. So if you have the motivation of, of following on the example that I was talking about cooking, may I always be able to provide nourishment for all sentient beings on their path towards enlightenment. And then you're cooking your food, and then you end, and then maybe you do a dedication, maybe directly after you've finished cooking, or towards the end of the day. That actually turns the act of blowing mantras into merit. Okay? However, I would also say that if you don't have that motivation and you don't have that dedication, but you just blow mantras onto the food, what you are doing is you more than generating merit. What you're actually doing is you're actually planting the imprints of enlightenment within that food. So anybody who partakes of it will receive the blessings of the enlightened beings. All right, but technically speaking, all right, because you didn't have that motivation and you didn't have that dedication, it would actually generate more karma than it would merit. However, okay, there is a however in this. Because the act itself calls upon the energies of the enlightened beings, you will generate a little bit of merit. All right, but so it will be both good karma and merit at the same time. Okay, I hope that answers your question. Chung says, Seifong would like to know if it is all right to chant mantras in the kitchen. Of course, it's all right to chant mantras in the kitchen, and it's perfect, especially if you're cooking. All right. Now, talking about cooking, I'm going to go a little bit off topic. All right, and I'm going to share something with you about cooking, especially when a lot of us actually offer cooked food onto our altars, all right? Or maybe we even cook food for our lamas, or maybe you're cooking food for members of the Sangha, all right? Now, there is a meditation that you can do while you're cooking, and this was actually shared to me by Pastor Jinai, all right? Now, when you're cooking an offering, all right, for the Buddhas, or just a food offering in general, basically what you do is you visualize any instruments, any of the cooking things that you're using, your pots or your pans or your knife or your chopping board, being made out of the best materials. So made out of gold, or made out of jewels, or made out of anything that you find precious, all right? Now, the food itself, even though it may not be the best ingredients in the world, but it is what you can afford, you visualize to be the best. So, for example, if you've got a plain old potato in your hand and you're going to use it for cooking, you imagine and you visualize that it is made, it is the most perfect potato out there, all right? And then as you're cooking and as you're preparing, you imagine everything you're doing is of the best quality and is all the materials and items are the best, all the foodstuffs as well are all the best. And then once you plate it and when you offer it up to your altar, to the Buddha, or you're making a food offering to whoever you're offering it to, you imagine that your bowl and the food inside that bowl is actually nectar, all right? And you visualize that being offered up to the enlightened beings. And then when they receive it, that they're very pleased, because you actually it is not that they need the food, it is that they're pleased with your effort of trying to generate merit in your spiritual path so that you can actually benefit others in the future, all right? So this kind of meditation itself is prefaced by motivation, and at the end, obviously, because it's an offering, you will do a dedication anyway. But this is a kind of more in-depth way of turning the act of cooking, an offering, into generating a lot more merit, all right? So I know that was off topic, but I thought I'd just share with you as we were talking about kitchen. Okay. Pastor Antoinette asks, if we forget the motivation of each activity, would it still be okay if we dedicate still? Yes, perfectly fine, okay? And the reason is this is something that I've been talking about in my previous sessions as well. Not all of us can be Buddhist. I don't think anybody can be a perfect Buddhist practitioner right off the get-go. Right at the beginning, you know how to do everything. Your motivation is completely pure. Your actions are completely pure, and your dedications are completely pure. Doing this is a process. It is something that you need to remind yourself to do, all right? And it is something that you need to habituate yourself to do, because we all have habituations of doing certain actions, of doing certain things in certain ways. It is obviously going to take us time for us to change the way we think, to change the way our minds works, to remember that we need to have a good motivation and do a dedication at the end. There is one thing that so even if you forget your motivation, you should still do your dedication, because it still dedicates and generates the activity that you've done and makes it into merit. It's just not as much merit as it would be if you remembered your motivation at the beginning and you did your dedication at the end. So as I've been talking about this, I've been talking about it from the point of view that is quite static, but we must remember that karma and merit always comes in degrees. It is not black and white. There's always degrees, all right? So even if we forget the motivation, make sure you do your dedication, all right? And one simple way of helping you to do this, all right, is something that Rinpoche shared with me, which is in the morning, train yourself. The first thing that you do when you wake up is you take refuge and you generate your motivation, Okay? And during that motivation, you basically try to start your day off on a good note with that motivation. Then as you go about your day, you may forget to remind yourself of your motivation. All right? And you may forget to do your dedications after something that could most probably be very meritorious. And then before you go to sleep, you do a dedication. So what's happened here is that you've set your motivation at the beginning of the day, and then you've done your dedication at the end of the day. So anything in between can be, if it was positive, can be termed to be merit-making activity. So what you've done throughout the day is you've generated activities, but at the end of the day, you have turned it into something that's merit-making, okay, that generates merit. Obviously, Rinpoche said, it would be best if before any action that you do, you remember that motivation and then you do a dedication at the end of it. But for us who are starting off on the spiritual path, or even, people who have been practicing for a while, but, keep forgetting to do it, it's very good to do it at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, because that transforms the things you've done during the day into merit as well. All right? Okay, so far I have no more questions.
Mr. Lam.
Mr. Lam.
Can merits be depleted?
Okay, all right. So Mr. Lam asks, can merits be depleted? All right, and the answer is no. Okay, when you have merits, merits will actually always stay with you. All right, the number of merits that you have can it always increases. You never deplete your merits. All right. So the force of your merit will always be there. However, that being said, you might not always be able to benefit from the energies of your merit if you generate negative karma. Because if you generate more negative karma and keep doing negative things, obviously the force and the multiplication of your negative karma will actually be stronger. So you'll have to feel the effects of it more, which will actually lead you to more suffering. So as well with the generation of merit, that's why we always say we have to focus on purifying your negative karma at the same time. And part of purification of negative karma is also ensuring that you don't engage in more negative karma. All right? So I hope that answers your questions. And one question I've had previously, a couple of last year, I think, can merits be stolen? Can somebody take your merits from you? The answer is also no. All right? That actually came up in the context of spirit harm and black magic. Can somebody take, steal your merits away? The answer is no, they cannot. All right. So I don't think I have any more questions left that I can see. So I will probably end today's session there. If you have any ideas of what you would like me to cover in next sessions, please do leave a comment and I'll see what we can what I can cover. Okay, got one quick question from Pastor Antoinette. Very good question. What happens if we do something negative during the day? Will it affect the merits from good things? No, it will not, because merits once created are always going to be there. However, if you do negative things during the day, what you're doing is you're multiplying, you're reinforcing and you're multiplying your negative karma. And when that gets to the point where it is very heavy, very negative, obviously it will start impacting your life more than the positive energies of merit. Okay? So just because you did a little merit-making activity in the morning doesn't mean that you can turn into a monster during the rest of the day, okay? And be negative and do negative things, all right? It has to go hand in hand, because there is no point accumulating merit and generating merit if you don't also stop yourself from doing negative things. But if it just happens to be one or two little things that you didn't think were negative, but maybe they ended up being negative, obviously it's where our spiritual transformation is obviously a work in progress. Otherwise, we would all be enlightened. So remember, it's not always black and white, and remember, it's a process. The spiritual transformation to become a better person is a process. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining Easy Dharma for Difficult Times.
So the last comment.
Okay, there's a last comment. Chung says, merits don't deplete, okay, which is true, perfect, but one may not have enough merits to continue on the spiritual path if the very heavy pull of samsara overwhelms the little merit we have. That is why we have to continue to build up this bank or positive momentum. You're 100% correct. And that pull of samsara that Chung is actually talking about in his comment is actually karma. It is actually negative karma, because the more negative karma that you have or that you generate, the more that you'll be pulled back into samsara or back into samsaric ways of living, which is what Chung has very rightly commented. All right? All right. Okay. All right. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you very much for joining today's session. Please log on tomorrow at 9 p.m. here again on the Kechara Facebook page, where Pastor David will be giving a session. All right. Thank you and have a good night.